effort to keep scouting alive, the scouting history alive, I want to bring your attention to the Sea Scouts, Air Scouts, and Explorers. I'm really fascinated by this section. Obviously, the Sea Scouts and Explorers are still active and moving on, even though the Air Scouts have since ceased to exist. Really, I want to draw your attention to the fact that some of these programs really developed and were crucial to try to help support the movement, unfortunately, in wartime. So there is a link. I myself am a member of the Scouts, as well as being a veteran from a war. So it really draws near and dear to me to show the evolution and to really go back to our lineage. If you go back to Lord Baden Powell and what the Scouts partially were set up to do, was to prep and to train them to be Scouts, to go into military service at one point in time. Obviously that has changed and the dynamic has changed, but the history is still there. So looking at it from a perspective of really World War II, pre and during World War II, I found this frame to be really interesting, putting it together. Some of it shows how there's high adventure for seniors, and it shows the Air Scout programs and some of the different initiatives that were going on. I like the fact that the uniform, you can kind of see two of the different patches that go along with the Air Scouting movement and the Sea Scouts as well. I went ahead and pulled out this publication within Scouting Magazine, Responsibilities for the Boy Scouts of America in the War with Japan. And it really shows how the Boy Scouts were a moving effort to try to help on the home front, to try to prepare the youth and to try to do emergency preparedness and to try to help prior to going into the service. Now, as we progress, one of the later uniforms, I would say this is mid-1940s through 1950. Obviously, you can see up in the left-hand corner the 1950 Jamboree for Allegheny Council and the 1949-1950 Crusader award that was given out. What's interesting is when it comes to the Explorer Scouts, they had to earn different things, kind of similar to merit badges, but they would earn different, basically, citations for the accomplishments that they've done. And there's a number of different ones that they would put on their sleeve, similar to the early way in which the Boy Scouts would put merit badges on their sleeves. And overall, that's just a uniform to represent the explorers and some of the transitions, some of their high adventure awards for the Exploring Silver Award, and for the Sea Scouts, the Sea Scout Quartermaster Award. Moving on to some of the Sea Scouts, obviously there's an image showing the Scouts trying to help out with Scout Weeks and how to save lives, stop fires, and ultimately try to sell war bonds during the wartime effort. There was an award for the wartime service that the Scouts put out in the 1940s to try to support it, as well as a number of other awards for service that was done within the states. And as you can see, this is one of the old Scout uniforms for the Sea Scouts. It's neat. It is very much wool. So I commend the Scouts that wore it out at sea, trying to navigate with their boats and their ships. I certainly commend them for wearing it. To me, it seems very itchy, and that's probably one reason why I wound up not going into the Navy and preferring the Army as my branch of service. And a neat little thing here with this cover that they have, you can see it was actually made in Baltimore, Maryland. So I kind of enjoyed that little fact. Moving over to another Sea Scout uniform. This is actually an officer's uniform that they would wear. I enjoyed picking that up. Towson, local outlier of Baltimore. And those are some of the Sea Scout rank and some of the different positions down on the bottom. As in everything with scouting, unless you're in that specific organization, I am not as well versed with knowing what each one of those is. So I certainly would love to run into some Sea Scouters to help me out and bring me up to speed on exactly what some of these positions mean. Next up is the Air Scouts. Air Scouts went from, I believe it was the early 40s through the early 50s. I can go back and look at the specific timeline. There was Air Scouts, and then Air Scouts evolved into Air Explorers. They had a number of 4 different merit badges that were specific to air scouting. So you'd have aeronautics, airplane structure, aerodynamics, and airplane design, as well as they had additional rank. So you would still have the tenderfoot, second class, and first class, as well as advancing into your specialty ranks. So you'd have within Air Scouts, you'd have apprentice Air Scout, you would have Air Scout Observer, you'd have Air Scout Craftsman, and you'd have the coveted Air Scout Ace rank. And in addition to that, they had different leadership positions that went along with Air Scouting as we progress over to the next display that would show different positions within the organization. And I have a breakdown of what those positions were. So you'd have squadron leader, assistant squadron leader, you'd have the squadron pilot, assistant squadron pilot, as well as the flight lead, I believe. And the neat part about the Air Scouts uniform is it was blue. Both the Air Scouts uniform and Air Explorer uniform tended to go along with the same patches. The patches did transition over time from stating Air Scout to Air Explorer, ultimately to not having a title on the patch. And then the Air Scouts would put on different things, just like the Sea Scouts would. So the Sea Scouts would have a Sea Scout regatta, and the Air Scouts would have either a survival weekend, an encampment. They'd call them air encampments to try to promote each one of the programs. And this program kind of coincided with other programs that were out there for young teenagers thinking about going into aviation, and it lasted primarily during the era of the post-World War II to try to prep pilots going into the service. And again, for Air Scouting or Air Explorer and Air Scouts, my understanding is it was really trying to help train each one of these scouts to try to learn the ground side, whether it be ground maintenance or whether it be the basics of aviation. So eventually, if they wanted to pursue aviation or get their private pilot's license, that they would have the basic steps and the basic understanding of how to fly.